Hey friends, welcome to the Canyon Pathways podcast, where we invite you to live like a son and lead like a father. Canyon Pathways is a global community of men on the journey from the striving of servanthood to the freedom of sonship as we traverse the canyon that is midlife leadership. My name is Noel Bouché, and I'm the founder and part of the leadership team for this venture, and I'll be your guide throughout this podcast as we explore and discover what it means to live like a son so we can lead like a compassionate father. Welcome to this episode of the Canyon Pathways podcast. Glad to be with you and eager to explore our topic for today. If it's your first time here, welcome. Glad you're sitting at the table of sonship with us on the CP pod. This is a growing community around the world, and it's a privilege to not only be a part of it, but to facilitate and to shepherd the growing relationships among men globally that are emerging from this community. We got two types of episodes here on the pod. The first one is an episode like today. We call it a field note episode, where we look at one of our field note essays, which is a short exploration of a word that embodies a concept that we really feel is important to this journey into sonship, from living like a servant and hired hand to a son and an heir of God, and knowing this God, not just as creator and redeemer, but as father, who we cry Abba to. And the second type of episode we call our conversation episode. So we'll, on the heels of every field note episode, we'll have a conversation between a couple Canyon Pathways brothers around the world, where not only will we hear their story, but get more wisdom on this particular topic that we're looking at. So we're looking at our field note essay on understanding in this episode, and next is going to be a conversation on this subject of understanding between Luke Smith and David Kosabuski in our community. So you don't want to miss that. Incredible wisdom going to be dropped there by both those men who have deep, long pastoral ministry careers, and insightful, not just theologically, but in wisdom and long personal struggles into this place of living like and identifying as a son and not a servant or hired hand of this God, but really part of the family of God. And it's going to be a great conversation. But today we're looking at first our essay on understanding. What a topic. You know, we deep down desire it. I want to understand. Especially when things are hard, we cry out for understanding. You know, something goes wrong, something goes sideways. We're in the midst of crisis. What's the first thing we as humans ask? Usually it's why? Why is this happening? And then maybe, how did it happen? And then, of course, where do we go from here and how do we respond? But we seek to understand the things that are happening around us. And when it gets difficult, when it is especially painful, when we have a sense of confusion, you might say, when we are walking through that valley of shadow, is when we are most desperately crying out for understanding, to comprehend, why is this happening? How do I get my mind around this? How do I grasp this mentally? And then how do I act? How do I respond? All natural things, all valid things. But if you've been with us here in the Canyon Pathways community, you know that everything we believe starts with identity. It's first, who am I? Not what do I do? Not what happened to me to get here. Who am I? Who am I? And by extension, who are other people? And especially, who is this God to me? Is he punishing me? Is he a far off God? Is he just a clockmaker God that set things going and now there's no rhyme or reason? He's distant. He's like that distant father figure perhaps in my life, and I'm projecting that onto him. Or is he close? Is he near? I don't feel like he's near. Why? How do I understand this? What will help me make sense of my current situation, of the difficulty that I'm walking through, of the puzzle or the problem I'm trying to solve? How do I get to understanding? How do I become one who has understanding? You know, I'm living as a father. You know, we might say to ourselves, I'm a father. I'm an employer. I'm a boss. I'm a leader. I have influence, and yet I feel confused. I can't make sense of the things that are going on around me. I'm paralyzed, or I'm trying everything, and it feels like I'm just flailing. what's going on with this? I know deep down I should have understanding. That's what a good father, a wise leader, a seasoned, experienced influencer of people should do. And I know even biblically, I'm supposed to cry out for this. My heart should be crying out for understanding. Like Solomon, I should be saying, give me understanding. Don't give me riches. Don't give me a long life. Give me understanding to govern these people. My heart cries out for understanding. I'm trying to not lean on my own understanding, and yet things aren't adding up. I know that I should be desiring understanding over financial returns or prestige or accomplishments, and yet I'm not feeling it. I'm feeling stuck or I'm feeling overwhelmed. We've all been there. And one way we approach it here at Canyon is, well, let's step back and actually look at what is this thing called understanding? What's this word I'm using? What is it that I'm really desiring? Maybe what I'm really desiring is not understanding. I'm confusing it. Maybe I don't really get what understanding is. That's what we explore here in our field notes. So let's do that. Let's get into it. I got some takeaways on the other side, but eager to share with you our field note here on understanding. Understanding. 20 years ago, I walked into the lecture hall for day one of contracts, a required course in the first year of law school. What followed was a 4-month tale of survival, replete with all the required plot elements: confusion, fear, despair, hope, and ultimately, successful escape. The 1L year is grueling enough on its own, and I hadn't helped myself in the lead-up. Only a few weeks before classes began, I watched the classic 70s film The Paper Chase, which, suffice it to say, does nothing to assuage one's anxiety about contract law. It was as if some dark specter already hung over the classroom before I had even been introduced to expectation damages, promissory estoppel, and other such scintillating concepts. Once into the semester, an archaic casebook, an ambitious young visiting professor eager to prove his brilliance took turns hiding the ball, reshaping even the simplest doctrine into a labyrinthine hall of mirrors. Infuriatingly incomprehensible was an apt description of most readings and lectures. Looking back, what sustained me in the midst of that multiverse of madness was an understanding of two things. One, why I was there, it was a prerequisite to a larger objective, and two, how it would ultimately end, with an exam in December that in all likelihood I would pass, regardless of the implications for my GPA. That understanding, despite daily lack of comprehension of the course content for weeks on end, sustained me. A clear, concise, better late than never study outline ultimately saved me, but that's for another essay. Viewed thus, my turbulent contract law experience embodied an important fact. Understanding and comprehension, while related, are not the same thing. At first blush, however, any distinction at all between understanding and comprehension is difficult to discern. Not only do most dictionaries use the one in the definition of the other, treating them as synonyms, but so have most people in our lives. We've been asked innumerable times, do you understand, by a superior, be it a parent, teacher, coach, manager, etc. And what's meant by that question is, do you comprehend what I'm telling you? i.e., an inquiry as to whether we mentally grasp the statements and instructions being spoken to us in a way that we'll be able to utilize and execute. As it turns out, comprehension does require a grasp. Understanding, though, requires something altogether different. The English word comprehension comes down to us directly from the Latin, meaning a seizing, a grasping hold of, an arrest. It shares the same root as prehensile, as in a prehensile tail of an animal, a tail that is capable of holding or grasping objects. To comprehend something, then, is to seize it, grasp it, wield it toward some end. It is to intellectually control a concept in a largely utilitarian sense. No wonder, as it comes to us from the Latin-speaking Romans, those ancient and unceasing builders of roads and empires, always seizing new engineering concepts as tools, or people groups as vassals. In contrast, understanding entered our vernacular from a very different clan and culture. It's Germanic and Old English. Its origin lies in a more tribal cultural scene where physical proximity to an accessible blood relative king, from the root kin, as in kinfolk or kin, was central to well-being. The historical sense of the word was a bit complex, a little tricky to describe, but here goes an attempt. To understand is to, well, stand under. Far from the active, technical, manipulable, outcome-oriented nature of comprehension, to enter into understanding is to step under a covering, to trust something above, to place oneself beneath a narrative, a proposition, a relationship. It is to give up grasping and begin restfully receiving. It is ultimately to be close to. It is why living as a son reveals to us that understanding, not comprehension, is more valuable than silver and gold. And in that, we begin to see that even when we are confused, we can experience the clarity of covering. Even when the situation is dire and out of our control, we can see the big picture and experience peace. Even when we don't comprehend the circumstances, we can understand the purpose. We begin to trust more and more that we are indeed sons of a good Father. And no matter what incomprehensible instance we find ourselves in, we can come under his covering. We can sit in the shelter of his shade. And when we are tempted to stand under the accusations that flood us, or the negative narratives and self-condemning story arcs we construct over our lives, we need only look to examples of other sons. We need only look to the Son to be covered by the truth that makes us free. Do you understand? By wisdom, a house is built, and by understanding, it is established. Proverbs 24:3. There's our field note essay on understanding, and I hope you're already taking away some things that the Spirit of the Father is already really speaking to your heart and mind through that, because this is a core issue. I mean, like we said, we see this throughout scriptures. Cry out for understanding, seek understanding, ask for understanding. Understanding is given to those who draw near to the Lord. We're not to lean on our own understanding, as we said, but in all ways seek the Lord, trust in the Lord, obey him, be near to him. And that's one of the things we saw in the field note, which I want to dive right into. Here's really three takeaways for me that were primary. And one is that is simply the finding that there is a distinction between understanding and comprehension. When I first explored this topic, that was, I can look back and say it was transformative for me, because again, I would use them kind of like a lot of dictionary aids do, that treats them as synonymous. Understanding, comprehension, synonyms, same thing, and definitely related in how we use the terms. But the words themselves contain these treasures that help us distinguish. I'm a lawyer by training, and that's one thing that is fundamental to good lawyering is distinguishing. Not just distinguishing facts, identifying them and distinguishing them, but being able to make arguments, distinguishing one case from another so as to move something into or away from a place that judicial precedent has been set. Distinguish between things. That's something we see as core to wisdom. Again, wisdom being having the same root as the word vision, wisdom being able to see. And so being able to see something for what it is and distinguish it from something that it might be related to but is not, is part of wisdom. And for me, man, being able to see comprehension and understanding as two different things really freed up not just my mental engagement with the issue, but it freed up my heart. Because again, if they're synonymous and I'm like, I'm confused, I don't comprehend what's going on around me, I don't really get what to do, what to say, how to use this information, how to deploy it in some way that's going to fix, solve, move something forward, then you're like, well, I must lack understanding. But what if there's another way? What if that's not true? What if I can be operating in understanding, even when my mind, in all its, uh, you know, uh, brilliance and the mystery of how the human mind works and ability, and yet finite capacity and limitations of my mind, my intellect. What if I can still have understanding, even when I can't comprehend? Huge. And I think it frees us up because it moves us, as one of our friends said, from head to heart. We talk about that being one of the longest journeys, the 12 inches from the head to the heart. That's a long haul for a lot of us, and that's maybe the difference, part of the difference, the distinction, the distinguishing between understanding and comprehension. Our minds are used to comprehending something, gaining information, which leads to ability and tools to accomplish something, to fix something, to engineer something, to rewire something, to manipulate something. Literally, take our hands. We understand it, so we can work with our hands to contort or to manipulate this thing. And understanding's a little different. Maybe that's the heart. Maybe that's more relational. Maybe that is me not leaning on my own mind's ability to assess and manipulate and control and grasp and seize what's going on around me, but to understand something good is going on around me. Why? Because I'm a son of a good father. I'm close to him. I'm near to him. He is doing this thing in me and through even the circumstances around me to bring forth fruit, to bring forth life, to ultimately, through that life, bring forth joy that leads to strength, not relying on our own strength. That's we're trained, we're groomed, especially in midlife leadership. A lot of us have paid our dues academically and we've built things and we have a household. We might have a business. We might have a career, a reputation. We've built all that. We're used to getting the tools and then employing them in constructing and perhaps deconstructing in order to re-engineer things. But understanding is I'm close to you as a son. I'm coming close to who? The king, father, from that Germanic root. And that starts bringing us to a place where things really start to get internalized. That's the second takeaway, is that maybe understanding is more this internalized heart condition as a son versus a comprehending mind that can affect my hands, that can grasp, seize, work with, change, pull apart, reconfigure things, again, to make them work according to my grasp of the situation. Maybe this is coming under and sitting. Come to me. Maybe if understanding is living like a son of a good father, maybe I can start to rest. Maybe my mind can start to slow down because my heart is being filled and it's trusting the one who wants my heart, who tells me to guard my heart, who says, give me your heart, believe in me with all of your heart. Let that flow into your mind as my spirit moves through you so that you can rest and have a mind that is in ease. He gives perfect peace to those who trust in him. Our minds can rest. It's getting internalized. Not just a concept, not just an abstraction, that some propositional truth, some scriptural revelation that I can just kind of quote back, but this is starting to become real. I am a son and an heir of a good father. I have a creator who is also redeemer. He is Lord and King. He's also father, which means I'm son and heir. I'm not a servant and a hired hand. I'm not working on a contract here. I'm not a spiritual 1099 where I do X and you give me Y for it. No, I'm part of the household. I have a place at this table. I can have understanding. How? As the field note said, by standing under that narrative, by standing under what? His covering, by just going to dad and standing next to him. That when we were boys, when we were young, like that's all we needed to know. We didn't understand what was going on that day. We didn't understand where we were going for vacation. We just stay close to dad, stay close to mom and dad. Some of us didn't have that. And that's affecting how we relate to this God who says, I'm a father. Maybe we suffered from abuse or emotional or physical abandonment. That's affecting us. Some of us wanted it desperately. Some of us did experience it. And when we were young, we were able to do that. Just say, I don't need to know a whole lot. I don't need to grasp this. I just know I'm going with dad. Dad, where are we going today? He's got everything. What do I do? I just stay close. Just stay close. Stay close to dad. I'm okay. And that's maybe part of this transformation of living like a son. And I think that's the third thing coming out of this, that it is about ultimately understanding that I can trust him. Trust in him with all your heart. trust in him, look to the Son before him, who just looked to the Father and said, I say what the Father does. It wasn't about figuring everything out. It wasn't about doing it on my own. The Son said, I do what my Father does. I say what my Father says and what he commands me to say. And he learned that obedience, which comes out of trust, all the way till death on the cross. That's what we're being called for. And that's something that for a lot of us, we see this a lot in the Canyon community, we've all experienced it. We start to really struggle with trying to comprehend everything, especially when it gets hard, because we start figuring out and try to figure out, and how do I get rid of this? How do I fix this? How do I eliminate this? How do I medicate this? How do I escape from this? And our minds keep racing. And we can't do it. We can't find a way out. And there's no peace. And there's no rest. And one of the things we start worrying about, and one of the narratives we keep creating at that point, is that I'm being punished. Things aren't going right. Things are hard. Things are difficult. Things are difficult in my marriage. Something went wrong with my children. I can't relate. I can't connect. We're going through this crisis. Something at work is not working. Financially, I had a reversal. This thing went sideways, and we feel like we're being punished. But what does Scripture say? There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. You live in as a son, you realize I am not condemned where there is punishment following on its heels. I'm being pruned. I'm being lovingly tended to. In other places it says discipline, but it's like if we're a branch connected to the vine, we realize I'm being pruned. Why? For my own good, for health, because there's fruit that's going to be produced out of this, a vintage that I can't comprehend. I can't see it. I'm not the vine keeper, but I have to trust that I'm being pruned. These things are being taken away. These things are difficult. They're forming something in me. It's not punishment. It's pruning. And that's part of the move from servanthood to sonship. If I'm living like a servant, like a hired hand, like an employee, the field note starts with, a little quick anecdote on my journey through law school. And one of the things in law school you study is you don't study employment law in the case books, because back in the day in the common law, it wasn't called employer-employee relationships. It wasn't human resources. It was master-servant law. And when we say we're living like a servant, that's what we're talking about. We're living like an employee of God, when I'm living like the posture and identity of I'm a servant, versus making that move to courageously trust that he says, I am your father. I have adopted you. You are a son and you are an heir. And when we start believing that, it's transformative. And we no longer are living like an employee who just says, I do X and I get Y. This is a deal. What's going on here? We start saying, this is my father. I'm just part of the household. I'm a son and heir. I'm beloved, just like the first son, the first of many sons. We become ones who can trust it. We can understand that narrative and stand under it, be protected, and realize, we're living in an age where there's some hard stuff. You're not guaranteed comfort, but comfort is not an indicator of favor. Freedom from problems, from trials, tribulations is not an indicator of it. In fact, as a son will suffer. There will be suffering. Why? Because we're mortal. Also because if we're following in the footsteps of the Son, he also suffered. We are not alone, and we're not being punished. We're being pruned. We're being lovingly tended to. We're not being left or forsaken. We're being invited to the table so we can rest, so we can receive. And every time we come back, we can be reminded and we can start to remember that we are a son. And out of that, we can lead like the Father. Friends, hope you enjoyed this Field Note episode, and check back next week for our next episode that'll drop, conversation between Luke Smith and David Kosabowski, two pastors in our community. We're going to drop a lot of wisdom about what it means to walk in the understanding of sonship, even when we can't comprehend, perhaps, the ways of the Father. So check that out. Check out the show notes for links, as well as a PDF with discussion questions if you'd like to use this episode for personal reflection or in small group meetings. Make sure you subscribe so you catch all the episodes as they drop, as we continue to develop a language of sonship through this podcast. Thanks to the team at Maroon Harpoon for producing this episode, and to our donors who make this venture possible. And as always, thank you for being a part of this Canyon Pathways community as we together live like sons and lead like fathers.